Touch that nurse again, Dr. Vale, and I will cancel more than my flight. Dante Rossetti spoke so softly that the fluorescent corridor seemed to stop buzzing, and the night supervisor, the security guard, and 3 terrified interns all turned toward him as if the hospital itself had suddenly grown a pulse. Nobody expected the man in the obsidian suit to still be there. His private jet to Palermo had been waiting for 40 minutes. His enemies were already gathering overseas. But he had seen Mara Bell crying alone in the emergency stairwell, one hand pressed to her trembling mouth, her white nurse's shoes stained with blood that was not hers, and something inside Chicago's most dangerous man had gone. Still, tonight mercy missed its flight. Mara Bell had spent 12 years saving strangers in St. Aurelia Medical Center, a private hospital where billionaires received new hearts, senators hid overdoses, and criminal kings signed donation checks under fake names. She was a stout, beautifully plus-sized trauma nurse with steady hands, lush curves, and a reputation for never panicking when alarms screamed. That night, a famous surgeon accused her of stealing narcotics, called her a heavy little liability in front of the entire surgical wing, and ordered security to escort her out before dawn. Dante Rossetti, head of the Rossetti Syndicate, heard only the last cruel sentence before finding her broken in the stairwell. What he did not know yet was that Mara had discovered a secret in the hospital's locked medication vault. Mara's shift had begun with a code blue in the presidential suite, not with tears. She moved through the chaos like a woman carved from calm, her soft, round figure wrapped in navy scrubs, her badge clipped beside a tiny silver saint medal inherited from her mother. Monitors shrieked. A ventilator hissed. One junior resident froze, with a syringe still capped in his shaking hand, and Mara snapped, "Move, or learn from the hallway," before sliding into his place and bringing a dying shipping magnate back with clean compressions and colder instructions. People underestimated her because she took up space unapologetically. They forgot that in a trauma-based space meant gravity balance and power. She had never needed to be delicate to be precise. St. Aurelia looked holy from the street, all limestone angels and blue-lit windows, but the VIP wing smelled of antiseptic expensive cologne and fear. Mara knew its secrets better than most priests knew confession. She knew which celebrities requested aliases, which donors demanded silence, and which doctors smiled for charity cameras while screaming at nurses behind closed doors. She also knew the narcotics cabinet had been wrong for 3 weeks. Fentanyl vials disappeared, returned, then vanished again under access codes that did not match the hands using them. Mara had copied the logs on paper because digital records could be altered. She had hidden the pages inside a battered lunch thermos. That was the first secret. The second was why Dr. Adrian Vale wanted her gone before sunrise. Adrian Vale was St. Aurelia's miracle surgeon, a man with glossy hair, famous hands, and a smile polished for magazine covers. He was also Mara's former lover, though nobody on the VIP floor knew how carefully he had once dismantled her confidence after long shifts and cold dinners. He had told her she was too much in every possible way, too loud in emergencies, too soft in photographs, too hungry for respect, too heavy for the elegant life he planned to build. When he entered the surgical nurse's station that night, the air tightened before he spoke. "Bell, step away from the medication terminal," he ordered, letting her surname crack like a slap. Mara looked up from the logbook and saw security behind him. The nurse's station went silent in layers. First, the keyboard tapping stopped. Then the whispering intern stopped. Then even the patient transporter near the elevator pretended not to breathe. Adrian placed a printed incident report on the counter between them, his diamond watch flashing under brutal fluorescent light. 3 missing controlled vials, all under your badge access, he announced loud enough for the entire wing to hear. Mara felt heat rush into her face, but her voice remained level. "That is impossible. I reported discrepancies twice." Adrian smiled with false sadness. "You reported them because you thought your size made you invisible behind that desk. It did not. You lumber through this unit, leaving problems everywhere." Someone gasped. Nobody defended her. Mara's throat closed, not because the accusation frightened her, but because he had chosen the wound he knew best. Adrian leaned closer, lowering his voice while keeping every word sharp enough for the audience. You are a stout nurse with a martyr complex, Mara. You overcompensate because patients like you and men like me eventually become embarrassed by you. The station blurred around the edges. She remembered 3 years of him pinching fabric at her waist, refusing to take photos, ordering salads. She did not want smiling when she cried, because he had proved his point. Her hands stayed open on the counter. She did not slap him. She did not scream. She simply swallowed humiliation like poison in front of 30 witnesses. A stretcher rattled past carrying a pale man with bandages crossing his ribs and 2 silent bodyguards walking beside him. Mara barely noticed them, but the taller guard noticed her. So did the man standing behind him, half-shadowed by the elevator alcove, broad shoulders filling a masterfully tailored obsidian suit. Dante Rossetti had come to retrieve his injured consigliere before flying to Palermo for a council that could decide whether war returned to Chicago. He did not enjoy hospitals. Hospitals kept records, asked questions, and smelled like endings. Yet he paused when Adrian's insult landed, and his dark, predatory eyes fixed on Mara's still face. He saw no weakness there. He saw a woman forcing herself not to break. Security will escort you to the staff locker room. Adrian continued, enjoying the performance now. You will surrender your badge, your phone, and any hospital property. If you cooperate, perhaps I can keep this quiet enough that another facility hires you for laundry. The intern stared at the floor. The night supervisor rubbed her wedding ring and said nothing. Mara looked at the report, then at the terminal, then at Adrian's too perfect smile. Something was missing from his accusation. He had not mentioned the midnight override. He had not mentioned the patient alias. He had not mentioned room 909, where a man with no listed family had nearly died after receiving the wrong sedation dose. That silence told Mara the frame was bigger than one stolen vial. I want union representation. Mara managed her voice rough but steady. Adrian's smile thinned. You are on administrative emergency removal. You may call whomever you want from home. Security stepped closer. Mara's fingers brushed the lunch thermos under the counter, but the guard blocked her reach. If she grabbed it now, Adrian would know where the paper copies were. If she left it, the logs might disappear before morning. Her pulse pounded in her ears like distant helicopters. She forced herself to turn away without looking back. Every step felt louder than the monitors. Every stare pressed against her spine. She walked past Dante Rossetti without knowing his name, carrying her dignity like glass, already cracked, but not yet fallen apart. The emergency stairwell smelled of bleach-old concrete and rain blown through a cracked vent. Mara made it down 2 flights before her knees betrayed her. She sat on the cold step between the 7th and 8th floors, pressing both palms over her mouth, because nurses learned to cry quietly. Her badge still hung from her chest. A smear of blood marked her sleeve from the code blue patient she had saved. Above her, hospital life continued with cruel indifference. Wheels squeaked. Intercoms chimed, elevators opened for people powerful enough to leave before consequences arrived. Mara thought of her thermos under the desk, the copied logs, the patient in room 909, and Adrian's smile. He had not fired her because she failed. He had fired her because she was close. Tears are expensive in places that sell silence. The voice came from the landing above her, a gravelly baritone wrapped in smoke and command. Mara jerked upright, wiping her face with the heel of her hand. A man descended 2 steps and stopped where the stairwell light cut across him. He was devastating in a way that felt unsafe. Chiseled, jawline, dark, fathomless, eyes, broad, muscular shoulders, and a stillness that made the cement walls seem too narrow for him. He carried his power quietly, like a blade hidden under silk. I am sorry, Mara whispered, hating that her voice shook. Patients are not allowed in this stairwell. His mouth curved without warmth. Good. I am not a patient. Mara stood because training was stronger than panic. Then you should return to the main corridor, sir. This area is staff access. He looked at the badge on her chest, then at the tear streaks shining against her cheeks. "You are staff, and they are throwing you out." It was not a question. Mara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of her body. Her navy scrubs, the fullness she carried, all the places Adrian's words had tried to bruise. You heard she breathed. The man descended another step. His movement held the silent grace of an apex predator. Enough. His large hand rested on the railing, warm color against cold steel. "Who put that look on your face, nurse?" The command in his tone pulled truth from her before pride could stop it. Dr. Adrian Vale, Mara admitted. "He accused me of stealing controlled medication. He made sure everyone heard. He also made sure everyone heard what he thought of my body." The man's eyes darkened until the stairwell felt 10 degrees colder. "And did you steal from this hospital?" Mara's chin lifted. "No." "Then why not defend yourself upstairs?" The question should have offended her. Instead, something in his calm made her answer honestly. "Because I have proof hidden at the nurse's station, and if I reached for it in front of him, he would know exactly what to destroy." The man went very still. "Proof of what?" Mara hesitated. Nurses survived by knowing when rich people were dangerous, and this man looked like danger taught to wear cufflinks. Still, she had already lost her job. Adrian would bury the truth before dawn. "Medication access codes are being falsified," she said quietly. "Not for personal addiction, for something organized. Specific patients receive altered sedation, then private transfers happen before chart audits. I copied the logs because the digital records kept changing." She expected disbelief. Instead, the man's expression sharpened with interest. "Room 909, he murmured. Mara's stomach tightened. "How do you know that room?" He stepped closer, and the scent of cedarwood expensive cologne and winter air surrounded her. "Because the man in room 909 belongs to me." Mara understood then. Not fully, but enough for fear to bloom. Room 909 held Lorenzo Greco, admitted under an alias after a construction accident that looked suspiciously like 3 bullet wounds, the 2 silent guards, the private elevators, the donation paperwork that arrived before the patient. Did she had guessed organized crime, but guessing was different from standing inches away from its king. "Who are you?" she asked, though part of her already knew. The man watched the realization form on her face. Dante Rossetti. The name hit the stairwell like a dropped instrument tray. The Rossetti syndicate owned half the city's whispers. Judges lowered voices around him. Bankers returned calls at midnight. Men disappeared after disappointing him. Mara stepped back, heel striking the stair edge. "I need to leave," she said, breath catching. "I should not have told you anything." Dante moved before she could turn. His hand closed around her wrist, firm enough to stop her, gentle enough not to hurt. The contrast frightened her more than force would have. "You are not leaving through a side door while a surgeon builds a grave under your name." Mara stared at his hand. "Mr. Rossetti, my problems are not yours." His eyes moved over her face with predatory calm, then softened in a way that felt almost more dangerous. "That changed when Vale used your shame as theater in my hearing." "You have a flight," she whispered, noticing the boarding pass folded inside his jacket pocket. Had Dante corrected, already reaching for his phone? He made one call. That was all. "Ground the plane," Dante ordered, his voice low and lethal. "Palermo can wait. Chicago cannot." Mara heard a man on the other end protest, sharp and urgent, but Dante ended the call before the sentence finished. The tiny click echoed in the stairwell. "You cancelled an international flight because a nurse cried?" she asked, disbelief making her reckless. Dante looked down at her, his thumb brushing once over the pulse hammering in her wrist. "No, Mara Bell. I cancelled it because someone tried to use my hospital bed, my wounded man, and your reputation as pieces on a board I did not give them permission to touch." His mouth curved into a dark promise. "And because you should never have been left crying alone." Mara hated the way those words moved through her. She had survived too much on practical things: compression, socks, black coffee, double shifts, patient notes written cleanly enough to save lives in court. She did not believe in rescue, especially not from men who carried empires in their pockets and blood in their history. "You cannot threaten a hospital because a doctor insulted me," she insisted. Dante's gaze dropped to the blood on her sleeve, then returned to her face. "I can do many things, but tonight I will start with the truth." He released her wrist and offered his arm as if the cracked concrete stairwell had become a ballroom. "You are going back to that nurse's station with me. Head high. No shrinking." The word shrinking struck deeper than he knew. Mara had spent years refusing to shrink in rooms designed for smaller women with softer voices and less stubborn spines. Yet Adrian had found the old bruise and pressed until it bled. "I cannot walk back in there," she confessed. Dante stepped down until they stood eye to eye on the landing, his body blocking the exit like a wall built from tailored shadow. "You brought a dead man back tonight with your hands," he murmured. "Do not tell me you are afraid of a peacock with a scalpel." A laugh broke from her despite the tears. It sounded cracked but real. Dante noticed. Something approving flickered in his eyes. "There she is," he said. "The nurse Vale should have feared first." When Dante pushed open the stairwell door, the corridor changed temperature. Conversations died before people understood why. A respiratory therapist dropped a stack of forms. One intern stepped backward into a supply cart and whispered a prayer in Spanish. The crowd physically parted, not for Mara, not yet, but for the man beside her whose name lived in newspapers without ever being printed near accusations. Dante did not hurry. He moved like a man who owned every room because in many ways, that he did. Mara walked at his side with her chin raised, though her hands trembled inside her scrub pockets. The whispers that had followed her earlier were gone. Every last one. Fear had wiped the corridor clean, leaving only the squeak of their shoes and the heartbeat in her ears. Adrian was still at the nurse's station, dictating orders to the night supervisor, with a satisfaction he did not bother hiding. He turned when the corridor fell silent, irritation already forming, then saw Dante and went pale, in a way no fluorescent light could explain. "Mr. Rossetti," Adrian said, instantly adjusting his posture. "There has been a staff incident, but I assure you your associate remains stable." Dante stopped on the other side of the counter. He did not raise his voice. That made everyone lean closer. "I did not ask about my associate." Adrian's eyes flicked to Mara, then away. "This employee is under investigation." "This nurse," Dante corrected, "kept Lorenzo Greco alive when your resident forgot how to breathe." The resident stared at his shoes, crimson with shame. Mara felt every eye shift toward her, not mocking now, measuring, remembering. Dante placed one hand on the counter, fingers relaxed. A simple gesture that somehow looked like the beginning of an execution. "You accused her publicly. You insulted her body publicly. You will now produce your evidence publicly." Adrian swallowed. "Controlled substance discrepancies are confidential." Dante's smile was small and terrible. Convenient word, confidential. Men use it when truth has witnesses. The night supervisor whispered Mr. Rossetti hospital policy. He turned his head slightly and she stopped speaking. Air dropped 10 degrees. Adrian forced a laugh. "With respect, you do not control St. Aurelia." Dante's eyes went dark and fathomless. "Dr. Vale, I control 3 board members, 2 donors, and the debt on your surgical wing." Adrian's perfect face tightened. Mara saw the calculation behind his eyes, the quick pivot from arrogance to survival. "Nurse Bell is unstable," he said. "Her personal resentment toward me has clouded her judgment." A murmur moved through the staff because now everyone knew there had been history. Mara flinched, but Dante did not look surprised. "Personal resentment," he repeated softly. "Did it become personal? Before or after you called her a stout liability in front of her colleagues?" Adrian opened his mouth. Dante lifted one finger. Silence snapped shut. "Anyone who disrespects her in my presence disrespects me. Anyone who frames her using my patient becomes my personal concern. You have 10 seconds to unlock that terminal and show the access logs before I become impatient." The night supervisor moved first, not Adrian. Fear made her efficient. She tapped her code into the narcotics terminal hands, shaking so hard, the plastic keys rattled. Mara stepped forward when the screen loaded, but Adrian snapped, "Do not touch that." Dante's body angled immediately, shielding her without appearing to move. Speak to her like that again, he murmured, and your next operation will be performed with borrowed hands. Adrian went silent. Mara leaned over the terminal, and her nurse's eye catching what the others missed. Timestamps too. Neat initials duplicated a badge access during a patient transfer when she had been inside another room pushing epinephrine. She pointed. That override. It is not mine. My badge was with security because the clip broke during the code. There are witnesses. A young orderly raised his hand, slowly, terrified of both men. I saw Nurse Bell hand her badge to the desk clerk at 912. She asked for a temporary clip. Mara looked at him with gratitude that hurt. Adrian's mouth flattened. Memory is unreliable. Dante gave a humorless chuckle. Then let us find something less fragile. He glanced toward one of his guards. Camera feeds. Medication room west corridor staff entrance. Now. The guard disappeared. Adrian's confidence cracked by a millimeter. Mara saw it. So did Dante. You had a skilled woman protecting your patients, Dante said, voice silk over steel, and you treated her like dirt because you thought nobody powerful was watching. His gaze sharpened. You were wrong about her worth. Worse, you were wrong about your own. The guard returned with a tablet 12 minutes later, though everyone in that corridor felt every second. The footage showed Mara at the code blue, both hands on a patient's chest. It showed her badge clipped to the desk, untouched by her. Then it showed a masked figure entering the medication room with a temporary override card issued from Adrian's office. The figure's face was hidden, but his watch flashed when he reached for the cabinet. A diamond watch. Adrian's diamond watch. The corridor inhaled as one animal. Adrian's hand slid instinctively toward his wrist, then froze. Mara did not speak. She did not need to. Her silence had more weight than any scream she could have given him. Dante looked almost bored. There is your evidence, Doctor. Adrian recovered faster than a guilty man should have. That is not conclusive, he snapped. Many staff members wear watches. Mara suddenly remembered the thermos, the paper logs, the handwritten correction she had made after room 909's sedation. Almost killed Lorenzo Greco. She moved around the counter, reached beneath the nurse's station, and pulled out her battered lunch thermos before anyone could stop her. Adrian lunged. Dante's hand shot out and caught him by the collar with brutal elegance, stopping him inches short of Mara. The room gasped. Dante did not even look at him. Careful, he whispered. You are very close to becoming a lesson. Mara twisted the thermos open, removed the folded pages, and spread them across the counter with trembling fingers. The logs told a story in numbers, and Mara knew how to make numbers bleed truth. She traced each altered dose, each override. Each patient moved to private recovery before morning audits. She explained the pattern in clean, clinical language, while the staff listened stunned. 3 VIP patients, 2 unexplained complications, 1 near-fatal sedation error in room 909. Adrian's initials appeared nowhere, but his office authorization appeared everywhere. He had not stolen medication to use it. He had used medication records to create controllable medical crises for certain donors, then profited from private transfers to an offshore rehabilitation clinic he secretly owned. Mara did not know the whole machine yet, but she knew enough. Dante watched her with something like admiration burning behind his coldness. Beautiful, he murmured. Mara blinked. The evidence, your mind. Hospital administration arrived in silk ties and panic. They came prepared to protect Adrian until Dante turned his phone around and showed them photographs of bank transfers already pulled by someone far more dangerous than compliance. The chief medical officer stammered. The board liaison sweated through his collar. Adrian's influence began collapsing in real time, not with shouting but with people stepping away from him one by one. You cannot do this, Adrian hissed at Mara. Finally losing the mask. You have no idea what you are interfering with. Mara looked at him across the counter, her tears dry now. I know patients almost died. Adrian's eyes flashed. You stupid heavy. Dante's fist hit the counter. Not Adrian, but the sound cracked like gunfire. Nobody breathed. Dante leaned close enough that Adrian could smell the winter on his coat. Finish that sentence, he invited in a low, lethal purr. Adrian did not. The famous surgeon, The man who had humiliated Mara with a crowd behind him stood silent and shaking before the woman he had tried to erase. Dante straightened and addressed the board liaison without looking away. Dr. Vale is suspended. His access is revoked. His office is sealed. The police may have him after my auditors finish understanding why my associate was placed in medical danger. The liaison nodded too quickly. Mara should have felt relief. Instead, dread slid under her ribs. "Your auditors?" she asked. Dante finally looked at her, and his expression gentled. "This is bigger than a hospital theft, Mara. You know that." By 3 a.m, St. Aurelia had become a cathedral of whispered consequences. Adrian was escorted to a private conference room not by police yet, but by men in dark suits who made hospital security look decorative. Mara gave a statement to administration while Dante stood near the window silent, listening, refusing every call from Palermo. Each declined ring sounded like a door closing somewhere overseas. His consigliere Lorenzo remained stable. Though the sedation error meant someone had wanted him weak before transfer, Mara understood enough to be afraid. The hospital conspiracy touched money medicine, and the Rossetti syndicate's wounded man. People had killed for less. When she finally signed the statement, the pen left an ink mark on her thumb. Dante noticed and handed her a handkerchief monogrammed with black thread. "You should go home," he said. Mara laughed once, exhausted and bitter. "I was fired 2 hours ago, framed, reinstated, and possibly recruited by a crime boss without signing paperwork. Home feels optimistic." Dante's eyes warmed briefly. "You are not recruited. Good. You are protected." That was worse. Mara folded his handkerchief carefully because it looked more expensive than her rent. "Protection from you means danger from everyone else." He did not deny it. That honesty unsettled her. "Vale is only a surgeon," Dante replied. "He is not brave enough to build this alone. Someone told him which patient to compromise. Someone wanted Lorenzo moved before sunrise. Someone expected me to board that plane." Mara's stomach tightened. "And because you stayed, they will know why." Dante's gaze moved over her face. "Yes." The first consequence reached Adrian before dawn. His hospital ID stopped working while he was still inside the administrative suite. His phone filled with missed calls from donors whose names had appeared in the transfer files. By breakfast, St. Aurelia's legal department had frozen his research accounts pending investigation. By noon, 2 medical journalists reported that a prominent surgeon faced questions over unauthorized VIP patient transfers. They did not print Dante's name. They did not print Mara's either. But Adrian knew who had pulled the thread. He sat in his glass-walled office watching staff avoid his eyes, and understood that public admiration was thinner than surgical gloves. Then his fiancée, a philanthropic heiress who liked his fame more than his face, sent one message: "My father says, you are toxic. Do not call." Mara watched the news from her tiny kitchen, with untouched toast cooling beside her. She had been placed on paid leave during the investigation, which sounded gentle, until one remembered that danger liked people alone and off schedule. Her apartment smelled of lavender detergent and old coffee. Plants crowded the windowsill. Her spare scrubs hung from a chair. Everything looked painfully normal, and that normality made her hands shake. Her phone buzzed with messages from co-workers' apologies. Gossip, fear disguised as concern. One message came from an unknown number. "You should have stayed a nurse and kept your mouth shut." Mara stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then another message arrived, this time from Dante. "Do not answer unknown numbers. My driver is downstairs." Mara went to the window and saw a black SUV idling at the curb like a shark in dark water. She should have refused. She should have called a lawyer, a friend, someone normal. Instead, she noticed a grey sedan parked across the street, with its engine running the same sedan she had seen near the hospital ambulance bay 2 nights earlier. Her pulse slowed in that strange way it always did during emergencies. Panic wasted oxygen. Observation saved lives. She packed the thermos, the copied logs, 2 protein bars and a small flashlight into her work tote. Then she changed from slippers into rubber-soled shoes. Her father, a retired paramedic who had raised her after her mother died, had taught her 3 rules: No exits. Keep balance, and never ignore the car that waits too long. The driver was a woman with silver hair, scarred knuckles, and kind eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Bell," she said, opening the rear door. "Mr. Rossetti asked that I take you somewhere secure." Mara hesitated. "Does Mr. Rossetti always ask by sending strangers?" The woman smiled faintly. "He usually sends men with worse manners." That nearly made Mara laugh. The grey sedan pulled away from the curb as soon as the SUV moved. Mara watched it in the side mirror. The driver noticed. "You see it too." "3 cars back," Mara replied. "Right blinker broken. Tinted windshield. Driver favors the left lane but avoids cameras." The woman's smile widened. "You are observant for a nurse." Mara tightened her grip on her tote. Nurses notice who intends to hurt people before doctors notice bleeding. The secure location turned out to be neither fortress nor mansion, but an old brownstone clinic owned by a Rossetti charity closed for renovation and guarded discreetly from rooftops. Dante met her in the front room beneath plastic-covered chandeliers, still wearing last night's obsidian suit with a fresh white shirt and no visible fatigue. Men like him did not look tired. They made exhaustion look like a rumor beneath their control. "You were followed," Mara said before greeting him. "Yes." "You knew I suspected." Her anger sparked. "So I was bait." Dante's expression hardened, but not at her. "You were never bait. The men following you are alive because my driver wanted confirmation before correcting them." Mara stared at him. Correcting, his mouth curved darkly. A polite word. "You prefer medical terminology." Mara should have been afraid. She was, but anger stood taller. "I prefer consent." The room went silent. 2 Rossetti guards looked at the floor as if the hard wood had become fascinating. Dante's eyes held hers. For the first time she saw not a kingpin but a man caught by a word he deserved. "You are right," he said after a beat. "I should have told you everything before moving you." The apology landed quietly without performance. Mara had expected denial, command, maybe charm. Not that. It unsettled her more deeply. "Then tell me now," she demanded. Dante gestured toward a covered examination table where folders waited. Vale's clinic transfers were not only medical fraud, someone used them to move witnesses, injured men, and cash under hospital confidentiality. Lorenzo recognized one name before surgery. The name was Silas Creed, a rival broker, who sold information to whichever syndicate paid fastest. Mara knew the name only because one sedated patient had muttered it while she adjusted oxygen 2 weeks earlier. She had thought he was delirious. Now she remembered the man's fear, his cold fingers around her wrist, his whisper that the saint on her badge was upside down. "One patient tried to tell me something," she said slowly. Dante stepped closer. "What patient?" Mara closed her eyes, reconstructing the chart from memory. Nurses carried details in the body room, numbers, medication times, blood pressure patterns, the sound of a monitor before collapse. Alias Daniel Cross. Private transfer at 4:40 a.m. No family. He had a burn scar here. She touched her collarbone. Dante turned to one of his men. "Find him." The man vanished. Mara felt the room shift around her again. This invisible machine of power responding to her memory. It would have been intoxicating if it were not terrifying. "I need to return to the hospital," she said. Dante's jaw tightened. "No. My original logs are still tied to internal timestamps. If Vale's people destroy metadata, paper will not be enough." "No." That was not a request. The guards looked horrified. Dante stared at her, and for one heated second, the air between them burned with equal stubbornness. Then he smiled, slow and dangerous. "You have a talent for making men reconsider orders." Mara lifted her chin. "Only when the orders are bad." "Fine," he said. "We go together." Returning to St. Aurelia by daylight felt more dangerous than entering at night. Daylight gave everyone masks. Administrators smiled too widely. Reporters crowded the curb beyond police barricades. Nurses watched Mara with guilt, admiration, and fear tangled in their faces. Dante walked beside her in a charcoal overcoat, one hand hovering near the small of her back without touching, until a reporter surged too close. Then his palms settled there, warm, despite his coldness. And the crowd recoiled. Cameras clicked. Questions flew. "Nurse Bell, did you expose Dr. Vale, Mr. Rossetti? Is your family involved?" Mara kept walking. The hospital lobby, usually full of polished donors and floral arrangements, fell into stunned silence as she entered under Dante's protection. This time people moved for her too. In the records office, Mara found the first system altered. In pharmacy, the second. In the medication room, the cabinet history had been wiped clean before 2:00 a.m. Adrian's people had moved quickly but not perfectly. Mara crouched beside the waste disposal scanner and removed the loose kick plate she had noticed weeks ago during a spilled saline cleanup. Behind it sat a tiny backup thermal printer that logged narcotic waste labels during network outages. Nurses knew where machines hid their grudges. She pulled a curled ribbon of paper, free, its ink faint but readable. Dante watched from the doorway with open fascination. "You hid evidence in a machine no one remembered existed." Mara smiled without looking up. "Machines remember. Powerful men forget anything beneath eye level." A crash sounded from the hallway. Then shouting. Dante's guards moved, but the door slammed before they reached it. Two men in maintenance uniforms burst into the records room, one holding a fire axe taken from the wall, the other holding a syringe capped in orange plastic. Everything slowed. Mara saw Dante reach inside his coat. She saw the first attacker swing. She also saw the wet floor sign near her knee, the rolling record stool and the heavy metal chart rack beside the door. Her size, often dismissed as a hindrance, by men like Adrian suddenly meant mass power and an unshakable center of gravity. She did not run. She planted both feet, shoved the stool into the attacker's knees, and drove her shoulder into the chart rack. The rack slammed sideways, pinning the man with the syringe against the wall. He cursed, dropping the needle. The second attacker swung the axe wildly, but Dante caught his wrist and twisted until bone strained with a sound Mara preferred not to name. She kicked the syringe beneath a cabinet, then grabbed the fallen wet floor sign and cracked it across the pinned man's forearm when he reached for her tote. He howled. Mara's breath came hard fury, and adrenaline burning through exhaustion. Dante stared at her for half a second, stunned. "They interrupted my evidence collection," she snapped. His answering smile was fierce enough to frighten the wounded men more than the gun now in his hand. "Remind me never to interrupt your work, nurse." Security arrived too late as usual, but this time the cameras had not been wiped because Mara had restored the local backup minutes before. The attackers were identified as contractors tied to Vale's offshore clinic. One carried a burner phone, with 3 calls from Adrian's private number. Adrian, who had been hiding in a friend's penthouse and telling himself the scandal would pass, received the news while packing a suitcase. His professional collapse became legal danger. His legal danger became personal terror when Silas Creed's name surfaced in the transfer ledgers. By evening, every donor who once praised his hands denied knowing him. By midnight, his medical license was temporarily suspended. And sometime after that, the rival men who had used his clinic realized he was now the loose thread, leading everyone back to them. Dante took Mara to his penthouse because the brownstone clinic had become compromised and because he finally accepted she would not sit quietly in any protected room. The penthouse overlooked the river, all black marble steel windows and warm lamplight that softened nothing. Mara stood near the glass, still in scrubs, her tote on one shoulder, her curls escaping their knot. Dante watched her reflection instead of the skyline. "You saved yourself today," he said. "You helped," she replied. "I broke a wrist." "Helpful." His laugh was low and surprised, a dangerous rumble made almost human. For a moment, silence stretched without fear. Then Mara saw a garment box resting on the dining table, tied with deep crimson ribbon. She looked at him suspiciously. "Is that a bribe?" "A correction," Dante said. Mara approached the box as if it might explode. Inside lay a dress of deep garnet silk, structured not to hide her body but to honor it. The bodice would support the fullness she carried. The skirt would move around her hips like poured wine, and the color refused apology. A note rested on top in sharp, black handwriting. "A woman who walks back into fire should not dress like smoke. Wear this tonight. My driver will take us at 8. Mara touched the fabric. throat tightening despite herself. Adrian had once bought her a black dress 2 sizes too small and called it motivation. Dante had sent one that assumed she deserved room, beauty, and command. "You are very arrogant," she whispered. "Yes," he replied, "but the dress is accurate." Dinner was not in a restaurant. Dante did not trust public rooms that night. Instead, a chef prepared food in the penthouse kitchen, while guards held the elevators, and the city glittered beneath them like a field of knives. There was saffron risotto, roasted figs with honey-grilled sea bass, bright with lemon and dark chocolate cake, so rich Mara nearly laughed at the indecency of eating it after hospital vending machine dinners. Dante asked about her father, her first code blue, why she became a nurse, why she kept a saint medal on her badge, though she was not particularly religious. He listened as if her answers were intelligence reports and prayers at once. He did not stare at her like a conquest. He looked at her like a miracle that had walked bleeding out of a stairwell and refused to fall. Mara told him her father had been a paramedic who taught disaster drills at the kitchen table using salt shakers as ambulances. She told him her mother died after a preventable medication error, which was why discrepancies made her relentless. She told him Adrian had loved her competence until it made him feel small, then loved hurting her more. Dante's face turned cold enough to frost glass. He had a diamond and treated her like dirt, he murmured. Mara looked down at the garnet silk across her knees. "I let him." Dante's reply came instantly. "No. He trained you to believe endurance was consent. It was not." The words entered her quietly and rearranged something old. Across the table, Dante's phone vibrated. He read the message once. His expression became lethal. "Vale has been found." They brought Adrian to the penthouse service level, not beaten but ruined by fear. His hair was damp. His famous hands shook. The diamond watch was gone, probably sold or stolen during his attempted escape. Mara entered beside Dante in the garnet dress, and Adrian stared as if he had never truly seen her before. In that moment, her curves were engineered for silk and power. She was not smaller, not hidden, not apologizing. Adrian swallowed hard. "Mara, thank God. Tell him this is a misunderstanding." She stopped several feet away, far enough that his desperation could not touch her. "You framed me, insulted me, endangered patients and sent men after me in records." Adrian's eyes filled with panicked tears. "I never meant for you to get hurt. I only needed you discredited." The confession slipped out because arrogance always mistook itself for strategy. Dante's guard lifted a phone recording light already glowing. Adrian saw it too late. Mara felt no triumph, only a clean, cold sadness. "Why?" she asked. Adrian's mouth twisted. "Because you noticed everything. Because donors trusted you. Because every time you walked through that wing, people relaxed. Do you know how humiliating it was to be the brilliant man and still watch patients ask for you?" The truth was smaller than she expected. Not grand evil, not passion, just insecurity dressed in surgical prestige. "You could have been great," Mara said. Adrian laughed bitterly. "I was great." "No," she replied, voice steady. "You were admired. That is different." The words struck harder than Dante's threats. Adrian sank onto a crate, all polish gone. "Silas Creed will kill me if the records go public." Dante stepped forward, his presence filling the service room until even the pipes seemed to hold their breath. "Silas Creed will be occupied surviving me." Adrian looked up, hope flickering grotesquely. "Then protect me. I can testify. I can give names." Dante glanced at Mara, and the choice in his eyes surprised her. He was asking without words, not for permission to act, but for the shape of justice she could live with. Mara folded her hands to stop them from shaking. "He goes to law enforcement with the records and a lawyer. He loses his license, his money, and his name. No disappearing. No martyrdom. Patients deserve testimony." Dante held her gaze, then nodded once. "As my queen commands." The phrase should have sounded theatrical. It did not. It settled over the room with terrifying sincerity. Adrian flinched, as if the title itself had cut him. "Your queen," he whispered. Mara felt heat climb her neck. But she did not look away from Dante. "Do not make it sound like ownership," she warned. Dante's mouth curved, but his eyes remained serious. "Never. A crown is not a leash." The service room went utterly silent. Mara understood then that this man's world was dark, violent, and built on rules she might never fully forgive. But he had listened when she demanded consent. He had changed course when she chose testimony over vengeance. Power did not make him safe, yet his restraint offered because she asked made him something more complicated than dangerous. Adrian was taken away before sunrise with sealed evidence, armed escort, and enough recorded confession to make every lawyer in Chicago sweat. His fall continued in public layers, first emergency suspension, then federal investigation, then donor lawsuits, then televised disgrace as patients' families demanded answers. The heiress erased him from engagement photos. Colleagues called him a lone actor. The offshore clinic's doors closed under flashing cameras. Silas Creed vanished for 36 hours, then reappeared in police custody after deciding prison was safer than whatever Dante Rossetti considered a conversation. Mara returned to St. Aurelia 1 week later, not as a disgraced nurse, but as interim patient safety director, the position created because every board member understood she knew where bodies were buried inside: spreadsheets, cabinets, and human pride. Her first day back, Mara wore navy again, but it no longer felt like blending in. Nurses clapped when she entered the VIP wing. Some cried, some apologized. The young orderly who had witnessed her badge clip handed her coffee with both hands as if presenting tribute. Mara accepted it and said, "Next time, speak sooner." He nodded, ashamed and grateful. The night supervisor resigned before Mara could decide what mercy looked like. Adrian's office became a medication safety review room with glass walls and no locks. At noon, a courier delivered fresh flowers without a card. White lilies, red roses, and one tiny silver saint charm tied to the ribbon. Mara smiled, despite herself. She knew who had sent them. She also knew she was not finished deciding what Dante Rossetti could become in her life. That evening she found him in the same emergency stairwell where everything had changed. He stood on the landing in a charcoal suit, no guards visible, his coat folded over one arm. "You are trespassing again," Mara said. Dante looked up, and the hard planes of his face softened. "I donated the stairwell renovation fund. That does not make it yours." "No," he agreed. "I came because this is where I first saw what Vale tried to break and failed." The fluorescent lights had been repaired. The concrete smelled faintly of fresh paint instead of bleach. Mara descended 2 steps, remembering herself curled on the cold stair, sure she was alone. "You cancelled a war council for a crying nurse," she said. Dante's gaze did not move. "I cancelled a mistake." What mistake? Mara asked, though her pulse already knew. Dante stepped closer, stopping far enough away that she could choose the remaining distance. "Leaving the city, while cowards used my name, my patient, and your pain as cover. Leaving you in that stairwell. Leaving before I knew why your tears made me angrier than betrayal." The confession was quiet. Dangerous men, Mara had learned, often used volume to hide emptiness. Dante used silence because his words had weight. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked. The question hung between them, honest and brutal. Mara thought of his world, his threats, his restraint, his handkerchief, his fury, the way he had looked at her evidence and called her mind beautiful. "Yes," she admitted. His face closed, but not enough to run. Dante exhaled like a man spared a sentence he expected to deserve. Mara took the final step down, close enough now to see exhaustion at the edges of his eyes. "I will not be hidden," she said. "I will not be owned. I will not become a decoration in a penthouse while men decide justice around me." Dante's answer came without hesitation. "Good." She blinked. "Good." His hand lifted slowly, giving her time to refuse, then brushed a curl from her cheek with reverence that made her chest ache. "You are a woman of glorious substance, Mara Bell. Lush, stubborn, brilliant, and impossible to move unless you choose it. I do not want you smaller. I want the world forced to make room." Mara's laugh trembled. "That sounds expensive." Dante's smile was dark and beautiful. "I cancelled a flight. I can cancel rooms." She shook her head, but her hand rose to his chest, feeling the solid iron of him beneath bespoke fabric. His heart beat faster than she expected. That surprised her enough to soften the last guarded place inside her. "No fires without my consent," she whispered. "No vengeance that destroys testimony. No deciding what protects me without asking me." Dante covered her hand with his large and calloused warm despite his coldness. Agreed. The word was not romance. It was a treaty. Maybe that was why she trusted it. In their world, treaties mattered more than poetry, and he had just signed one with his pulse beneath her palm. When Dante kissed her, it was not a conquest. It was a promise made in the stairwell where she had once tried to disappear. His mouth was firm, careful, then devastating when she leaned in by choice. Mara felt the cold railing at her back, the warmth of his coat around her shoulders, the echo of alarms somewhere far above them, and the impossible truth that the worst night of her career had opened a door she never would have chosen but could no longer deny. She was still a nurse, still stout, still soft and magnificent, still the woman who noticed hidden logs and broken blinkers. But now, the city knew something Adrian Vale had learned. Too late, Mara Bell did not shrink. She survived, gathered evidence, and made kings cancel flights. Mercy missed its flight that night, but justice found the stairwell. Dante Rossetti had crossed oceans of blood without hesitation, yet one crying nurse made him stop, turn around, and choose a different war. Mara Bell did not become powerful because a Mafia boss protected her. She had always been powerful. He simply arrived in time to watch the world discover it. And when Chicago whispered her name after that, it was never with pity again. Did you love seeing Mara rise from humiliation to command while Dante cancelled everything to stand beside her? Hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe for more. Drop a comment below telling us whether Adrian deserved prison ruin or one final night alone in that stairwell.